Good evening or good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Tan Xiaochin, and I'm moderating the 7th YouTube session of the 8th fall edition of our Read for Pixels campaign. Through Read for Pixels, the Pixel Project is collaborating with 11 award-winning best-selling authors to raise awareness about violence against women and to raise funds for the Pixel Project to keep our efforts to end violence against women alive and kicking. We'll be telling you more about the Read for Pixels fundraiser, which has lots and lots of exclusive author goodies a little later in this session. And you can find out about the Pixel Project by visiting www.thepixelproject.net. Now, we have a very special guest for today's live Q&A session, the fabulous YA author, Derek Landy. Welcome to Read for Pixels, Derek.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, as you guys probably already know, Derek is the author of the award-winning SKULDUGGERY Pleasant series and a bunch of Marvel comics. He lives in Ireland where he collects movie props and various cats, and also a particularly stupid dog. Now, Derek has also... Oh, is she here?
There.
Yeah, there she is. Now,
Famous.
Now, Derek has also generously donated a couple of wonderful treats to the stash of author goodies we have up as perks for donors from the United States and Ireland. So, apologies to everyone who's not in these two countries at the Read for Pixels Rally Up fundraising page. Now, goodie number one, which is Derek Landy's Die a Ridiculous Death. And this is really an amazing perk, so listen up. Derek is kindly offering to name a character after one very generous Read for Pixels donor, a minor character who, in Derek's own words, quote, appears, has maybe one line, and then dies stupidly, unquote, in the yet unnamed Book 15 of the Skullduggery Pleasant series. He will also send the donor a signed copy of the book when it is released so that you can keep it as a memento. So donate $2,500 now before someone else does, and Derek will make sure you live forever as a memorable character in the imagination of millions of readers worldwide, subject to certain terms and conditions, of course. Now, goodie number two is a signed and personalized edition of Derek Landy's Grimoire. Not only will you get a signed hardcover special edition of the Grimoire, Derek will also personalize the book for the donor upon request. Now, we've raised 1,006. Oh, looky, there it is. That's what you're going to get. Now, we've raised $1,650 towards our $5,000 goal so far, so please do give generously. All funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women. Now, if you're watching this session on YouTube right now, you will also be able to ask Derek questions live. Just make sure you're logged into your YouTube account so that you can type your questions into the chat box to the right of the YouTube screen, and Anusha, who is today's producer and chat box moderator, will relay them to me to read out to Derek to answer. Now, let's get on to our questions and give Derek the floor. All right, Derek. So, question number one. So your books feature a range of female characters who are complex, well-rounded, very human people with distinct personalities. They range from Stephanie Edgley, better known as Valkyrie Kane, who began her adventures with Skullduggery when she was only 12, to Tanith Low, a master swordswoman, and China Sorrows, who can magically make anyone fall in love with her. Now, you have previously said that Valkyrie is based on a friend of yours. So who or what were your inspirations for your other female characters?
Well, China was the easy one because when I came up with Skullduggery Pleasant, and I realized what he was, and I realized he was essentially a private eye. He had the suit, he had the gun, he had the nice car. Yes, he was a skeleton. And he was dead and he used magic, but essentially he was a private eye. In private eye movies, in film noir, there's always the femme fatale. And so China was my ultimate femme fatale. She was the enigmatic, a beautiful a woman. Don't start barking at cats, for God's sake. Who you could never quite trust. And so she became Ed China Sorrows. And
Mm.
the weird thing was, because I had never written a femme fatale character, and I mean, I'd wanted to, but I never did. Um, when I was writing China, I had her confined in my head. You know, she's this, and she can only be this. But as when you write a long running series,
Mm.
you realize that all of the little boxes that you try to put the characters in um, no longer will fit because the characters will grow. So even the femme fatale, who is stereotypically a beautiful, enigmatic woman,
Mm.
will grow beyond this the stereotype. The same with Tanith. You know, I wanted the the warrior. I wanted you know, the the woman who uh, will tell jokes as she's fighting, and you begin with one idea. You begin with one a trope or stereotype, and then they just expand. So
Yeah.
yeah, isn't that right? Yes, it is. Yes.
Well, that actually ties in beautifully to my next question. And like you were saying, through characters like Valkyrie and Tanith in the Skullduggery books and Amber in the Demon Road series, you rework young female archetypes and stereotypes into characters that your readers can relate to and root for. And especially since it was, Skullduggery Pleasant was such a long-running series, right? How do you break stereotypes in order to create female characters with agency while dealing with the world around them, including situations that involve sexism, misogyny, and violence against women and girls? I mean, throughout all these years.
Um, it, it's 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 something that I have grown into. At the start, um, I based Valkyrie on a friend of mine, and I
Hmm.
did this because for some reason I didn't trust myself in writing about a female protagonist. I didn't think I'd be able to keep her consistent, and I didn't think I'd be able to keep her real. Even though that's my job as a writer, but starting out, because I had started out in films, in screenplays where the main characters were both male, and so this was my first time having a protagonist be female, and for some reason I thought, okay, I'm gonna need help. I'm going to need a touchstone so
Mm.
that when who I can use to make sure Valkyrie doesn't veer off into unrealistic territory. Now, what
Mm.
I've discovered amazingly, which is a revelation that I think will help every male writer. And this is completely revolutionary. It
Mm.
changed the face of literature. Women are people,
Shock horror.
and that took me by surprise. Um, when I realized, okay, I don't know I why I thought I needed a touchstone. It like you write her real,
Mm.
and that's all a writer needs to do. It's the same as writing a guy, same as
Mm.
writing someone who's non-binary. You know,
Mm.
it makes no difference. You write them as a person. You write them as a real person with real feelings, and suddenly you can, it it opens up. So so that kind of, that kind of took me a few years until I was comfortable enough in my own ability as a writer to, you know, um, to just trust myself with the character that I'd created, for God's sake. So, I don't know why I had this idea, but it was in my head for
Mm.
years.
I mean, it's interesting because I was rereading the earlier books in the series, and it really struck me that even though the series is named after Skullduggery Pleasant, but it's so much about Stephanie or Valkyrie,
Yes.
and yeah, and here you are saying that you weren't confident, and I'm like, what? But most of the story is from her point of view, or
Yeah. 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 And it's interesting because when I came up with the idea, and I came up with Skullduggery's name first, and
mm-hmm,
that told me who he was and what he was and what he was
mm,
like. And in order to hear how he sounded, because I had a character, and oh my god, he's kind of awesome, kind of cool, but I won't know if I'll be able to handle him until I write. So
mm,
within a few minutes of his name popping into my head, I was writing a conversation that he was having with someone about the things he missed about being alive, and what it's like
mm,
to be a skeleton. And for some reason, the person he was talking to was a girl, and I don't know why, because
mm.
as I said, I had only written like two movies, but they both had male protagonists. But
Right.
but the person he was talking to was a girl, and as I developed the story and the characters, she stayed a girl. But there was, you know, an opportunity
Mm,
to, instead of being Stephanie, she would have been Stephen. And
mm,
and I and I mean, there was an opportunity. It was never a temptation. But there was the opportunity to change Stephanie to Stephen, but that would have altered absolutely everything, because
yeah.
if the the series was about a 12-year-old boy, and he eventually reaches 26
Mm-hmm,
over the course of the series, if it was about, say, a teenage boy who was taken under the wing of this arrogant, um, a genius of a detective who's so cocky and so irresponsible, and so dangerous to be around. If it
mm,
was a teenage boy, then the books would be completely different, because a boy would have looked at Skullduggery and found someone to emulate, and
yes.
found someone to prove himself to.
Mm,
So the entire series would have been about a character who's growing up, but he has to prove himself as a man, because that's what
mm,
I would do.
yes.
But because Stephen was Stephanie and
Mm-hmm,
became Valkyrie, um, and because I based her around a very formidable friend of mine,
mm,
who I just could not see having moments of doubt,
mm,
moments of weakness. Uh, Instead of trying to prove herself to Skullduggery, she would automatically assume that she was his equal, and so
mm,
that was my approach into her character. Um, and so you start off with someone uber confident, and then from a storytelling point of view, from a writerly uh, point of view, you take that to its logical a conclusion where she becomes as arrogant and as cocky, as rebellious as he is, and then you break it down because really it isn't about him, it's about her. And so we have to take her to the edge of where she becomes like him, and then go, okay, this isn't actually ideal because he's closed off, and he's unchanging, and she still has the chance to change, and the chance to improve, and the chance to be a better person than he is. But in order to surpass him, she has to break it all down again, and then um, find other ways forward. So yes, the series is called Skullduggery Pleasant because he's the iconic visual character. He's got the best name. Um,
Yep.
and especially back in 2007 when the first book came out, there was the accepted wisdom, and it probably is true, that boys would be reluctant to read a book with a girl as a main character, but girls absolutely fine with reading a book where the main character is a boy, or in this case, a skeleton, who yeah. So it it worked out, but yeah, it was never, the focus has never been on skullduggery, and it never will be, because my interest in the series is always through Valkyrie's eyes.
Yes, and definitely, totally a different dynamic if she had been a Steven instead. Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so speaking of, Valkyrie becoming arrogant and stubborn and all those good stuff. So your female characters are powerful, resilient, and compelling in their own individual ways as they face down difficult situations and problems. And some readers might perceive them as unlikable. Now, when writing female characters, do you ever feel pressured by gender and cultural stereotypes to make them likable or relatable? And do you ever get any flack for not making a female character likable enough?
First of all, I love these questions. This is wonderful. Um, I I got I have received some feedback from readers over the years, younger readers especially. Older readers, they are used to the idea, I think, that the main character doesn't have to be nice.
Mm,
Um, but but younger readers, I've got tweets and all kinds of messages and letters, say, which is basically, um, for example, okay, how a Valkyrie treated her first boyfriend. I hated her. I hated her. He's such a nice guy. Why did she do this? Why did you write her like this? Why, and my and obviously this was all music to my ears, because it meant, not only did they like the boyfriend enough to get upset about this, but it was written in such a way that they got upset about this. But yeah, my you don't need the character to be nice.
mm,
You can, there are examples all through literature and movies and TV shows, where where the main character, he doesn't have to be nice, or she doesn't have to be nice. They, but as long as they are real, that's what you need. With Valkyrie, I suppose it was a conscious effort on my part to not interfere with her natural evolution and her natural growth,
Mm.
because she was headed down this way, because she was based on a friend of mine. And my friend, as I said, intimidating, formidable, very stubborn. She, as many people adore her as hate her. She's one of those, but she's that very strong kind of person that every so often you will meet in your
Mm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so because she had been my basis, my original basis for Valkyrie, I saw that as just the natural evolution of the character. Now, when my writerly instincts took over the character, and when I trusted myself to actually write her as a person as opposed to having to base her on somebody real, this didn't change, because the tendency and the natural, I think, inclination for a male writer writing a female protagonist, especially for this age group, is to make her relatable, and to make her nice, and to make her admirable, and essentially to put her on a pedestal and go, okay, she is strong, she is beautiful, she is kind, she
Hmm.
is all of the wonderful attributes that we all wish we possessed are all in one character, and she's up there on a pedestal, and she's never quite real. And
Mm.
the problem is, you lose, it's the flaws that make the character. And
Yep.
uh, the moment the moment I realized that I trusted myself enough to take over the evolution of the character, that was when all of these ideas in my head solidified, and I realized, no, okay, um, first of all, I can't alter the course she's on, because it's her natural course, it's her natural growth.
Evolution. Mm.
Um, but also, the people think they want one thing, and they think they want a perfect hero,
Mm.
but they don't. Um, we want the flawed hero. We want the Indiana Jones,
Yeah.
the guy who always fails.
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah. So that essentially has been my approach from the very beginning. I got off to a good start, because she's based on somebody real, but then um, you can't betray that afterwards by pretending she's perfect, because nobody is. And if you pretend, you know it, there is misogynism, and then there is where you attribute all negative characteristics to a, a female character. Then there's the
Mm.
opposite of that, where she has every positive characteristic, but they're still not treating her as real. Um,
Mm.
so yeah,
Yeah. 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 I understand. I mean, it's like so basically the character it just evolves, right? Naturally, and
yeah,
you just write it like that, right?
pretty much
Okay.
simple.
Okay, so speaking about strong female characters, so in 2013, you wrote a blog post laying out some of your thoughts about writing such characters and how, when you waxed lyrical to your mom about Buffy and Xena, she pointed out that having a blonde cheerleader save the world with her martial arts skills is a male tactic that doesn't equal feminism. Then she floated the question, which is basically, how about her saving the day using tactics that aren't all about punching and kicking and killing? Now, you said you didn't have an answer to that question then. So we were wondering, do you have any answers to that question now?
Not really.
Oops.
I was I was so disheartened when I went to my mother and I said, "Look at Buffy, look at Xena,"
Oh, hi, cat.
and aren't these wonderful examples of feminist heroes? And she said, "They're not feminists." And I said, "What? Look at them. They are." She says, "No, they are doing male things in a
Mm.
male way. They just happen to be female." And so I was disheartened. I said, "But no, Mom, you're not getting it. They're really cool." And so, yeah, she pointed out the fact that, um, yeah, they were resorting to traditionally male avenues of solving this particular problem.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, that is still, and I adore Buffy and I adore Xena,
Mm.
and
Yep.
it's interesting. There are some writers of Wonder Woman who have subverted that idea and who have emphasized the the female um,
Mm.
approach, like Gail Simone, who
Mm.
who wrote Wonder Woman
Mm.
for ages. She has some wonderful speeches, wonderful moments where the fact that she's a woman, Wonder Woman is a woman, is not incidental. It's
Part
who
of it.
she is.
Mm-hmm.
So I still haven't squared that particular circle because I love action scenes and I love big fights and I love the the structure of movies that where you get beaten and you get the last remnants of strength and determination and you come back in usually
Mm-hmm.
with flames or explosions behind you and it's all awesome.
Mm-hmm.
um and I adore that, and that is how I tell stories.
Mm.
And um and I am an admirer of the kind of story that ends without, as in, it's a thriller, or it's even it's usually a thriller, and it
Mm-hmm.
ends on a calm note. I always want to end big. I always want to end explosively.
Mm.
And so my characters, Valkyrie, I keep putting her into situations where she has to solve problems physically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I still haven't reconciled that particular problem. I mean, my mother, amazingly, she loves my books. Oh, she thinks they're the
Aw.
best books in the world. Um, so I haven't actually spoken to her about that idea for years. So I'd be
Mm.
very interested to hear what she thought of what I was doing. But it's I mean, my approach to violence in the books, um, and amazingly, I haven't. I have explored this more through a male character,
Mm.
who is young and he's kind of bewildered and he's just stumbling through life, and hopefully he is the next a, a generation of man, where he is a lot more open and a lot more introspective and self-aware, because I have him looking at violence ends to violent situations and going, how about we just talk, or how about we just circumvent this?
Mm.
And so I'm exploring that through him, but bizarrely not. Well, I suppose not bizarrely, not through Valkyrie, because Valkyrie has been traumatized by all the stuff that I've put her through. That
Mm.
for a long time she was caught in a cycle. Now she is starting to break free.
Mm.
But it's I have not reconciled that in my own head, and how to satisfy my own storytelling needs by
Mm.
giving the big final act and the big battle scene, and how to reconcile that with this has been how stories, and so how history
Mm.
has been, each little event have has ended this way because the generals are male, the emperors are male.
Mm-hmm.
um I don't know is the answer. I haven't yet, um
Reach the
I haven't
conclusion
yet
yet?
come to a satisfactory conclusion for myself. Um, I think possibly a conversation with my mother is
Is due.
necessary. Um, yeah, yeah. Because
Okay.
it's yeah, yeah. It's just I can see the problem. I know what the
Mm.
problem is, and
Mm.
I'm on the verge of a solution. Uh,
Excellent.
yeah,
It's on the tip of your tongue. It will come
yeah.
any minute now. Okay, so we will be talking about your male characters in in a couple of questions time. But I mean, despite you saying that it's all physicality and whatever, but your books do depict complex relationships between women and girls, including female friendships such as Valkyries with Tanith and China. And they have a lot of camaraderie and complexity that would feel very real to many female readers. Now, many fantasy authors, especially male authors, still stumble when it comes to passing the Bechdel test. And for those watching who are not familiar with the Bechdel test, it basically asks whether a work, whether book, movie, TV series, etc., features at least two women talking to each other about something other than men. Now, why do you think many science fiction and fantasy authors still have trouble writing stories that pass the Bechdel test, despite the fact that there are many more things that women talk about other than men?
I think they haven't watched enough Gilmore Girls, to be honest. That's always been my philosophy. Um, um, uh, yeah, I find that test really helpful. Um, I don't generally have to think about it all that much. In
Mm-hmm.
scripts, in screenplays, I do have to sometimes go, okay, wait a second, where are the women? Yeah, yes, it's a certain kind of script, but there's no point in just having one. Why, yeah. Anyway, with um with Skullduggery, I've been able to um populate it full of female characters to the point where um I think all the women were in charge,
Mm. Mm.
and um, it. I can't understand why it's still a problem. Um, but I've been mystified on a great many things. I was just remembering there when you mentioned the blog post. I don't write the
Mhm.
blog anymore because, oh my God, blogs, oh, it takes so much time. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, but I did write another blog post about the fact that I think I was in my 20s, and this is in so late 20s, sorry, early 20s, late teens, in the mid 90s and onwards. And
Mm,
at this point, I'd stopped thinking of myself as a feminist because um, I thought the world had, we were a wave, and we were, on the top of the wave, and we were about to come crashing down, and it would all
mm,
be wonderful. And we were, just over the crest of that wave, and so the
mhm,
only place we could go was the future, and it was going to be wonderful. So
mhm,
you know what, I didn't have to think about feminism anymore. Didn't have to think about it because in a few months, in a year, the
it would be
world
so
would,
normal that,
yes, yeah, it would be
Mhm.
completely normal. Everyone would be equal. um and and then something happened, and instead of the wave crashing down onto the beach of the future, it
Mm,
it rolled back. and
mm,
and the idea that, okay, I'm going to have to pick up the feminist badge and dust it off and put it on again. um it was going right. We
mm,
still have work to do. So I've been befuddled before about this stuff. I
mm,
assumed that we could stop fighting. And my mother's a feminist, and this the kind
mm,
of thing she reads and lectures about in 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 universities, and this is the kind of thing we would talk about. But yeah, I've been wrong before, and so when it comes to that test, whether you can have two female characters talk about something that isn't how great or how tortured the male character is, I don't understand. I I don't get it.
mm.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a break from all this heavy stuff and go to audience question.
Ooh.
So, Rowan Langford asks, will there
Oh, look at
ever
the
be a
doggy.
Skullduggery Pleasant film?
Oh, look at that doggy. He's so cute. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Will there be a celebrity
You know
present?
what it is.
Um, we are trying to get. Oh yeah, and now my dog is over. He goes, oh, JJ, yes, indeed,
He heard you.
yes. Um, we are trying. I mean, I've been trying since 2007 to get a film off the ground. We've come very close. We've always veered away the last second. We've been with amazing studios. Yes,
Mm.
it's a dog. Look at the screen. Look over here, idiot. No.
Hi. Nope,
Okay.
nope.
um, right now and I've been working on the script now for the last few years with various studios and companies and people.
Mm.
Um, and when you write a script again and again and again, uh, it becomes this weird new reality to you.
Okay.
So this is a constant. This is just part of my life. I will always be living with the first
Draft.
script. Um, but yeah, we are. The script is now ready to approach seriously to try and get something made, but there is no guarantee that we won't be facing another 5 or 10 years of
Oh
development
no.
hell. And because in movies, it will never happen. It it only happens when it's about to happen. Up until
Mm,
that point, up until you have everything in line, it might not happen. Even if you have your director and your stars
mm.
and you're getting your finance and everything, it might still fall apart. So we are trying our best. Yeah.
Well, there you have it. Okay, so let's talk about male characters, right?
Mhm.
There's a wide range of male characters in your books. There are misogynistic characters, but there are also men and boys who treat their female peers respectfully, who are vulnerable and who are not afraid to show their emotions, and who defy masculine stereotypes. So, who or what are your inspiration for your male characters?
Um, I don't know. um, it's just how I was raised.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, yeah, it's just how I was raised. This is, I mean, I'm not 100% anything. Certainly not 100% virtuous. I've still have very old fashioned ideas um, about what it is to be a man and what it is to be and how you interact with people because of
Mm,
that.
mm,
Um, but when you're raised on a farm
mm,
with a strong father
mm,
and a strong mother, and
mm,
the father's a farmer and the mother is intellectual, um, and a feminist and all about books and all about literature and all about and with the whole Buffy thing, it's you approach her
mm,
and you think you have a solid argument, and he goes,
mm-hmm.
no, have you thought about this? And you go, oh no, I haven't. um so when you're raised like that, then you start off well.
Mm,
And I mean, I yeah, I've known people, we all know people, but I know guys, and I had friends, and male friends who seem to be like me, seem to have the same approach to interacting with people as I did, and then go, "Oh my God, you're not like me at all, are you?"
mm,
Um, so, so I've seen it, and I don't know where my inspiration comes from. My parents.
mm.
That's it. My parents. Yeah,
Okay, let's
I'm
go.
rambling, by the way.
Okay, so channel your mom for this question. Do
Okay.
you think reframing how stories describe men and boys away from hostile and toxic stereotypes and towards complexity and even vulnerability can be one of the ways fantasy writers can break away from harmful tropes that promote toxic masculinity and the dehumanization of women?
Yes, is the
Okay.
answer to that question. Yes, I do. Um, and like fantasy writers, horror writers, science fiction writers, we have an advantage, um, because we get to reinvent the world, with
Mm,
every book, and we get to reinvent even slightly the rules and how we interact with each other. Um, fantasy and science fiction, they're easier still. If it's set in the future, you can have an equal society where men don't have to be they don't have to exist in their little boxes. Um, a fantasy, you just have a society of wonder and magic. Um, yeah, it's you try as much as possible,
Mm-hmm.
um, or I try as much as possible when I've been writing these books, because I'm very aware of who reads them. Um,
Mm.
and while the core readership, they're now people in the people who were 12 or 13 when we started, they're now like mid 20s
Mm.
into their 30s, and we have a gigantic range of people who
Yep.
read the books, but there will always be the constant resurgence of young readers.
Mm.
And the idea that I can in some way, um, not even call out a certain a toxic approach to a situation, because no one likes being lectured to, and no one likes being told, you've been doing this wrong, so
Yep.
how about you do it this way now.
Mm.
But instead, uh, kind of like to lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
In the later books, we have a character called Omen, who starts off at 14,
Mm.
and he's just a little guy, like bumbling through class in his magical school and getting into danger, just like Valkyrie did.
Mm.
Um, and there was and I plot certain things in an ironclad fashion, and then other things I leave loose, or I'll even um, mention something in one book with no idea how I'm going to resolve it in the future books. So Omen's love life was
Mm.
this thing that it never even occurred to me to plot out. So um, there was a girl in his first appearance, and he really fancied her. And she was so pretty and so smart and so funny and so cool. And he was like, "Oh, she's lovely."
Ah.
Um, and he got to know her a bit, and she got to know him. And oh my God, she likes me as a person,
Mm.
as a person. So he kind of, he asked her out, and she said, "Oh, maybe just stay friends."
Mm.
And I was raised by movies and TV as much as I was raised by my parents. And when that happens, I know what you're supposed to do. When a girl
Mm-hmm.
says, maybe we'll be friends, I've seen enough 80s movies to know that you've got to persist, and you've got to persevere, and you've got to
Mm.
win her around,
Mm.
and prove that you're a boyfriend, immaterial.
Mm.
And that's was my approach, for years, as a teenager, even in my 20s, my early 20s. That was it was never, because in the movies, the the boys, the protagonists, they were never aggressive, and they were never creepy, and they were never sleazy. So you weren't aggressive, and you weren't sleazy, and you weren't creepy. But you know what? You fancied her, and eventually she will maybe see you in the same way. And so I realized in my 20s that why was I even thinking this? And good God, uh, movies have lied to me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
like John Cusack movies just lied to me for years. Um, and so when Omen fancied a girl, and he asked her out, and she said no, I had him accept it. And I
Ah,
had him go, yeah, okay, yeah, fair enough. Yes, we'll be friends. Why the hell not? And I had other people um, in in his class. I had, um, another guy go, okay, dude, here's what you do. You write poetry and you do this and he goes, no, 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 no. She said no, so I'm gonna.
yes.
And so I this is something that I learned myself
Mm,
through a trial and error. When I was in school, I asked a girl out twice, a year apart, and
mm,
the first time she said no in the loveliest way possible. I went, okay, yeah, 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 okay, yeah, we're friends. And then, but I still fancied her. And then, like a year later, I said, have I asked you out last time, and you said no, and maybe now, and again, the loveliest way possible, she said no, and I go, oh, okay, yeah. And it took me a few years to go, well, why didn't I just accept the first no as her final word on the matter? So it took me a few years to break out of that kind of conditioning. Um, and so with Omen, I just put it in there,
mm,
as a kind of a lead by example. All those lovely boys out there, those lovely guys who will grow up to be lovely men, like decent and honorable and nice and kind. This is for them. This is a shortcut to the realization that I had that you can be decent and nice and wonderful and honorable and all these wonderful things, but you can
mm.
still cross the line um, and be persistent when you really have no right to be persistent. Um, so yeah, so that is my approach to um, the male toxicity that is having a resurgence.
Mm. And again, ties in perfectly to the next question, which is the line between consent and coercion isn't always very clear in YA and or fantasy books, especially when there is romance involved. So, do you think this is an issue that YA and fantasy writers have started tackling successfully in recent years? Following your excellent example, of course.
Um, I would hope so. I would. I mean, from a storytelling point of view, it's romantic.
Mm,
It's when the boy, you know, um, is so caught up in love that uh, that he persists despite all the odds against him. Um, so I understand why it has been done because it is wonderfully romantic. But
mm,
our perception of romantic is skewed, has been skewed by 80s movies, um, primarily. Um,
mm. Very
where,
Hollywood.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, where the persistent guy who won't take no for an answer has been rewarded again and again, and
Mm,
and even staying that won't take no for an answer.
yeah.
Up until recently, that was always a good thing.
Mm,
In the last few years with Me Too movements and uh, to highlight it now, won't take no for an answer is not a good thing, and
mm,
that's a good thing. That realization. So hopefully, because in children's books and middle grade and YA, this is when these are the first book, and in comics, you know, these are the first um, this is the first exposure to stories and to characters that people get. And so
Mm.
if you can get in there on the ground floor and try to tackle some of these problems, even though it's not our job to tackle these problems, it is not a writer's job to give a good example.
Mm-hmm.
A writer's job is to tell a story, and it's to be good at telling a story. So, there will be books and movies and TV shows and comics that and songs that are bad examples in the
Mm.
future going forward, the worst examples, but they will be brilliant. And that's absolutely fine,
Mm.
because it's not the writer's job to correct society's course.
Okay.
But
Mm-hmm.
if you
Okay.
have an opportunity, if you have the ear of young people, and if you have an opportunity, um, in the course of your writing, in the course of your story, to help make the world even a slightly bit better,
Mm.
then wouldn't it be wonderful if you just seize the chance, um,
Mm-hmm.
and do it so well that it's not preachy and it's not a lesson and it doesn't stand out on the page, but people absorb it. That's
Mm.
I would love if the whole leading by example thing, it's more of a absorption. It's more of you surround um yourself with a good vibes, and people
Mm-hmm.
absorb the good vibes, and you surround yourself with good deeds, and people absorb the good deeds. I am learning how to take my dog for a walk without my dog going nuts. And she's a puppy, so she just goes nuts at anything. But the latest thing that I've heard, that I've learned
Mm.
about taking the dog for a walk without her going nuts, is to reward the good behavior. So when she does
Mm.
something right, you go, "Oh, you're the best doggy," and you give her a treat. And
Hmm.
when she does something bad
Mm.
behavior, you ignore. You don't punish her.
Mm.
So it's positive reinforcement. She learns to do good things because the good things are all around her, and the bad things are ignored. And so um, now people aren't dogs, and you can't
Mm.
you can't ignore uh, bad behavior, but you can reward good behavior, and you make that the 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 more rewarding life choice. So yeah.
Lovely. I like that. Well, strangely enough, we have a question for Sansa, which I hope you can answer. Comes from our producer, Anusha. She's such a troublemaker. So, which is the greater enemy for Sansa? Delivery people or squirrels?
Well, you see, Sansa has it easy because in Ireland, especially around here, we don't have an awful lot of squirrels.
Ah.
In fact, we don't have an awful lot of anything because the bloody cats. We have four cats in the house
Hmm.
and one that isn't technically ours. So we have five cats around us at all times. So I can't even have a bird feeder in the garden anymore because the birds aren't safe here. Um,
Hmm.
and so yeah, it's delivery people. Um, but enemy, they're not enemies. They're just friends she hasn't met yet. So she will
Ah.
rush over to them and so excited. She just loves
And,
everyone. As I said, she's
and
small.
share her slobbery love with
Yes,
everyone.
yes, yes.
Okay, so we'll go to a slightly more serious reader audience question. So you carrot asks, have you ever had an issue with a female character of yours pointed out to you by a beta reader that caused you to change that aspect of the story or character?
Um, by better reader, or it, I don't really. I mean, are they talking about an editor or a sensitivity reader?
I think, well, aren't beta readers usually like people outside of the process who read your books to give you feedback?
I don't
Like
do that.
maybe a friend or
I don't
okay.
do that. No.
Mm.
Um, I won't let anyone read my books.
Ah.
But that's an excellent question. Um, I've sent one of my books out to sensitivity reader,
Hmm.
because it was my first instance really of dealing with a non-binary character.
Mm.
So I just wanted to make sure that I got everything right and I wasn't insulting anyone. Uh, so so that's the only time that I've ever sent it out to anyone who isn't my editor or agent.
Mm.
Um, but the thing about writing a long running series is that really all of you are my better readers.
Mm.
Um, because it isn't about one book. The
Mm.
characters grow and evolve over 15 books. So I will get feedback. Um, readers will either send messages or letters, or even at signings they'll come up. I was doing a signing years ago, um, and there was a reader, and they said, "Why don't you have any non-binary characters?" And I went, um, well, I don't really have an answer for you. I
Mm.
don't have them because I don't have them. And they went, it would be nice if you did. And I went, you know what? You're absolutely right. Um, so when I came back with phase two of Skullduggery from book 10 onwards, uh, I had a non binary character.
Mm.
Um, and so my interactions with readers will highlight gaps in my approach, and sometimes it isn't even that specific. It's I before the pandemic I was on tour a lot, and I met all kinds of people and all wonderful, smart, wonderful readers, obviously with wonderful taste in books. Um,
Mm.
and over time you start to build up an idea in your head of who your readership is. And I
Mhm.
was going, and I thought, oh my god, most of my main characters are white, and most of my main characters are technically straight, even though
Mm.
I said at the very beginning of the series that when you've been alive for a few hundred years, there is no real such thing as straight anymore.
Mm.
Um, but I didn't really have any uh, LGBTQ plus relationships.
Mm.
And while I had plenty of women, I didn't have any trans people. I didn't have any non-binary people. There was
Mm.
a plethora of people that I didn't have, and but the people I did have were pretty much all white.
Mm.
So this wasn't even pointed out. No one has ever come up to me and said, "Why don't you have more like people of color in your books, or like ethnic any other
Mm.
um, um, any anyone else other than white?" And no one has come up to me and said that, but I I meet my readers, and they're not all straight white people. Um,
Right. Mm-hmm.
so so it's the same kind of thing. You absorb it. You see who you are writing for, and you realize I'm not serving them. I'm not allowing them to see themselves in my books.
Mm,
Why should they have to put themselves into shoes like mine? Why can't they have shoes of their own in these books? So yeah. That's so my readers have allowed me to change the story, and they've allowed the characters to evolve. And I'm still not. I will never be 100% there, um, because the moment you make it obvious, hi Doug, the moment you make it obvious what you're doing, the spell is broken. So you
yes.
introduce things in a natural way, and sometimes that takes time, and sometimes it
Mm,
isn't successful. So you have to go. I need to rethink this, but you could just gotta keep trying until you get it right.
yeah. Well, I mean, really props to you and well done for, realizing that and trying to do something about it. I really admire that. Right. Okay, let's hop to another audience question. So, Misty306, hi Misty, asks us, besides your books, which series would you recommend for young readers containing both realistic female characters and paranormal elements, besides Neil Gaiman?
Uh, okay,
Is Neil Gaiman even on that list?
um, okay. Well, this is. What are you doing? Stop squatting. You look weird. Um, Abarat by Clive Barker. I think
Oh,
he has
yes.
only 3 books out so far, and the fourth one has been in development for, I'd say, about
A
15
million
years.
years.
But they are wonderful books, and there's a female protagonist, like
Mm,
Candy, and
mm-hmm,
she ventures into a series of islands where each island is a different hour of the day, and they are populated by the weirdest
mm,
beings. And he paints all these wonderful illustrations. So yeah, I would say Abarat by Clive Barker. Um, it's magic, and it's scary, and it's yeah. Um,
yep.
so yeah, and I think and I think Candy is a good character. Um, she's fierce, um,
Yep.
and yeah, the realistic female characters and paranormal elements apart from Neil Gaiman stuff. I don't know. I mean, Aberrat's really good, so I'll just say keep on saying Aberrat. Um, uh,
Sure.
yeah. And go on to comics and read Miss Marvel. Um,
Yes.
she's a good a teenage a new character. Yeah,
And non-white.
yes indeed.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about geek culture. So, geek culture in general, including science fiction, fantasy, has had its share of critics saying that it's still too male-dominated, despite a rising number of prominent, well-respected, and well-known female authors. Plus, there is still plenty of hostile, misogynist, and sexist behavior by male geeks towards female geeks. So, what do you think needs to be done to make geek culture as a whole, whether it's comics or gaming or books or conventions, more welcoming for women and girls?
I don't know.
Fair enough.
Um, I mean, I've been keeping an eye on this stuff. I think everyone involved in this industry has to keep an eye on it. And so I've seen the the vitriol that only started a few years ago, and it's amazing how you can trace back the groups involved,
Mm.
and but it's how to solve it. You really, the only thing that I can do is stand with um, female creators, minority creators, all of the people who are being attacked,
Mm.
and make sure that their base is so big and so strong and so solid that they are, you know, they can. We are the base that they can stand on and fight.
Mm.
Because the other approach to try and dismantle what they are facing would seem to be an insurmountable obstacle, because the enemy doesn't have one face, and
Mm.
the enemy doesn't have one name. It has umbrella definitions and umbrella uh, groups, but they are anonymous, and for the most part,
Mm.
um, and they are armed with tactics to belittle and 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 destroy, essentially. Um, yeah, it's disheartening to
Mm.
watch. I'm an optimistic person, so I think we will triumph in the end. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. This isn't. Um, I don't think this is a problem that can be solved on its own. This is a problem with us, with
Mm.
social media, with society, with the fact that we're all on opposite sides of the argument.
Mm.
No one wants to compromise anymore. No one wants you know, to chill out. Um, the people who are being targeted can't compromise. They cannot
Mm.
chill out because they are under threat. But the people who are hurling the hate, they don't want to, because they are having fun, and they're having so much fun, and they are being rewarded.
Mm.
They are finding their own rewards, but most of all, they're just having fun, and it's a power thing, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a. I mean, when you take every hatred out there and you bring it back, um, this isn't a scientific argument, but it seems that it all stems from women. They they want power over women,
Mm.
and they want to impress women. They want to be strong, and so that's where it all starts from. Everyone wants power, and the first step to the next step is you overcome the women, and
Mm.
then you can target um, the minorities, then you can target the communities, and yeah, but it's the women. They're the first obstacle to overcome. So every single hatred out there, has a misogynistic foundation.
Mm.
But we're not going to solve that by tackling the the symptom.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah,
A little bit at a time. We have to change the entire mindset,
yeah.
society. Mhm.
That's all we got to do. Just
Yeah,
change
so
the
easy,
world.
right? Well, we have actually reached the final question of our session, and a bit of an obvious one, but you have been so very incredibly supportive of our Read for Pixels campaign and our anti violence against women work as a whole. Why do you support the cause to end violence against women?
Because what else would you do? Uh, it's it's yeah. What else would you do? I mean, if you think you're a good person, um, you've got to do something. You can't just sit there. There's a wonderful like a comic series that is ultra violent, ultra ultra offensive, and it's about being a man, and it's called Preacher, and it was out
Ah,
in the 90s, and it's about being a man. And at the end of the 66 issues, uh, what Ed, Ed Jesse Custer's view of a man is different from how it started. Um, but there's a wonderful line in it, and it's something his father says to him, and it's you've got to be one of the good guys, son, because there are way too many of the bad. And
mm,
I mean, yeah, if you think you're a good person, um, if you like to fall asleep with that little knowledge, yeah, I'm a good person. I mean, I'm not perfect, but I'm good. Um, yeah, then whenever you can, whenever the opportunity presents itself, you have your own life, you have your own obsessions, you have your own distractions. No one is asking you to go above and beyond. You just have to do the bare minimum, and the bare minimum is being one of the good guys. So
mm,
that's what I try to do. Um, and as I said, not perfect. Uh, and there are lessons that I've learned, um, which make me a better person than I
mm,
was. More more open minded, more inclusive, more accepting, more tolerant. Um, and yeah, you learn as you go. And so
mm.
for anyone out there who thinks, they are expected to be perfect at all times, you're not. You just have to be decent. There.
I love that. Well, I'm going to put myself back on. Hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And thank you so much, Derek, for that awesome session. It's like you read our minds sometimes.
That was fun.
Okay. Yeah. So, just to remind everyone, Derek has not only graciously spent time answering our questions here today, but he has also generously donated a couple of wonderful treats to the stash of author goodies we have up as perks for donors, only in the United States and Ireland alone, unfortunately, at the Read for Pixels Rally Up fundraising page. Now, goodie number one, which is a totally awesome perk, is Derek Landy's Die a Ridiculous Death. And Derek is kindly offering to name a character after one very generous Read for Pixels donor, a minor character who, in Derek's own words, quote, appears, has maybe one line, and then dies stupidly, unquote. And this will be in the yet unnamed book 15 of the Skullduggery Pleasant series. And he will also send the donor a signed copy of the book when it is released for you to keep as a memento. So donate $2,500 now before someone else does, and Derek will make sure you will live forever as a memorable character in the imagination of millions of readers worldwide, subject to certain terms and conditions, of course. And goodie number 2 is a signed and personalized edition of Derek Landy's Grimoire. Not only will you get a signed hardcover special edition of the Grimoire, Derek will also personalize the book for the donor upon request. Do you have a copy of that? I think you showed it earlier. There you go. That's what you'll get, guys, if you donate to get this goodie. There are also plenty more author goodies available from authors and publishers, including S.L. Huang, Sam Hawk, Arcady Martin, Sarah Rees Brennan, Jeannie Lin, Paul Tremblay, Sebastian de Castel, Dutton Books, Entangled Publishing, and more. And new goodies will be released every week throughout this September. Now, we've raised $1,650 towards our 5,000 goal so far. So please do give generously. All funds go towards the Pixel Project's work to help end violence against women. And allow me to share a file with that will tell you where to get all these nice things. So you can donate to get the goodies at RallyUp at bit.ly/R4P RallyUp 2021. And do note that this is case sensitive. And you can find out more about our Read for Pixels campaign at bit.ly Read for Pixels. Now, this year, we also have something very special to share with you. The Pixel Project is proud to announce that our very first charity anthology titled Giving the Devil His Due, which is kind of like a Twilight Zone meets Promising Young Women short story collection, was just released on September 1st. And aside from the special limited edition cover, and let me share a slide so that you can have a look at it. Right, here we go. Okay, so aside from this lovely special edition cover, we have also teamed up with 12 of the 16 authors who contributed to the anthology to offer an exclusive limited edition bookplate for early bird buyers. Each author will sign 16 bookplates, and they will be available on a first-come, first-served basis. Each bookplate also includes a resource for domestic violence and sexual assault victims and survivors in 205 countries. So, if you know someone who has or is suffering from domestic violence or sexual assault, buying this book for them might be a gift in more ways than one. Now, for more information about the anthology and how to score a bookplate, visit bit.ly/Giving the Devil His Due, case sensitive. And for those of you who are interested in getting your very own copy of the anthology, you can order it from major booksellers worldwide, including Amazon, Kobo, Google Play, Book Depository, and more. Now, all net proceeds from the sale of the anthology will go towards keeping the Pixel Project's campaigns, programs, and initiatives, such as Read for Pixels, alive and kicking. Now, if you want to find out more about violence against women and what you can do about it, visit the Pixel Project's website at www.thepixelproject.net. And that's all for our session today. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. And thank you so much, Derek, for joining us today.
Absolute
So goodbye
pleasure.
to everyone. Thank you, and have a good day or good night wherever you are in the world.